another awesome episode of the Wealth Preservation Podcast. As always, I am your co-host, Josh Saunders, with Mark Seitzer today. Mark, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Doing fantastic. Looking forward to today's episode. We have Brett Owens on, and you have known Brett for a bit longer than I have. I've known him for about 3 days. But you have a much bigger backstory. Brett, how do you know Josh, and where are you recording out of?
Yeah, recording out of my office here, Sacramento, California. So it actually is separate from my home, which was nice last year during 2020. Had a little fortress of solitude to come to for a few hours in between homeschool meetings. Josh, my initial meetings with Josh, we trace back to 8-9 years ago. I think it's a Twitter success story of sorts. We have a mutual friend, Aaron Klein, more successful than, well, at least I will ever be, of Risk-Alive fame. So made the introduction to us, and then we started having lunch, going to networking events together, and then stayed in touch throughout the years.
Yeah, and Brett's one of those cool dudes that just like has an amazing business mind, and everything I don't know about everything he does, but on the business front at least, he makes stuff work, and it's been really cool to just pick his brain on super smart stuff. He also is a prolific writer, a skill I for sure don't have. I can barely cobble together two coherent sentences, which you'll hear me talk about that. But anyways, it's just been fun to know Brett and just bang ideas off of people that are smart and smarter than you and have a good mind for business. So I think it'll be a perfect guest for this episode. Awesome, Brett. Welcome. Thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Those were pretty good sentences right there, though.
Yeah. So Brett, let's kind of jump back and and go back. So what are you kind of doing currently, and kind of what's the entrepreneur Brett doing today, and then we'll go back old school after that.
Yeah, sounds good, Josh. Sure thing. So today I'm working with influencers, brands, creators, that type of thing. So matching up e-commerce types of products, people who make those types of products with influencers and people who have that online presence, whether on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and making that match there where you've got some sort of product that they're looking to get above obscurity and then matching them up with an influencer creates that type of content. That came out of my previous company called Lead Dino, a company that we actually just sold, and we're happy about that. That was an affiliate marketing company that was focused on e-commerce, and that was more of a tracking tool. So we would take a tracking link that an affiliate might share and then wrap that over to a sale. So an e-commerce product, if they wanted to give a commission of, say, 15%, anyone who sold their T-shirts or their beauty products or their skincare line. So that was that a tool that we mapped out of that. Lead Dino came out of my first software company called Crometa, which is a time tracking software company. We were in the legal accounting industry, so real old school industries that are dominated by resellers. And we were looking for some type of platform to be able to track referrals, and being stubborn software guys and probably kind of, to be honest, idiots about it. Rather than just taking something off the shelf, we decided to build something, and then we decided to spin that off as our own company. So it went Crometa to Lead Dino to Affluencer today.
So Josh, three SaaS companies, pretty basic stuff, right? I mean, this is what most people do with their life, right? I mean, when I'm not hanging out with my family, I'm just doing 3 SaaS companies. That's all.
Yeah, no big deal. It's
perfect,
easy. Any dummy can do it.
Ah, man. So
whatever keeps us from having to get a real job. That's
right. Yeah.
Well, and because that is something that we try and dive into on the show is this concept of, hey, is the entrepreneur made? Was he born that way? Sometimes it's a mixture of both. I mean, going back in your past, I mean, were you the 8-year-old who was, I don't know, also managing 3 SaaS companies or building multi-level marketing to get all your buddies to work for you? Or, were you an entrepreneur early on or how'd that go?
Yeah, no, not at all. Early aspirations as an 8-year-old astronaut, professional basketball player, so sort of the usual there. Didn't get into entrepreneurship until pretty much end of college when I realized that I was going to have to go get a real job. Yeah, as it does now. But that got in my head a little bit. So it was about senior year of college when I took a class called Entrepreneurship for Engineers that got me thinking about it. But whether they're made or born, I agree. I think it's kind of a combination of both. It's something a lot of people want to be. I think there's, you probably need to be fortunate enough to have a certain level of aptitude. We also just need to work at it also, because I was, if I look back at my early days, really not too good at it for, to be honest, probably a long time. So glad I stuck with it, and my wife stuck with me throughout those years to get things off the ground.
Hey, I got to ask that Entrepreneur for Engineers class, did it have spreadsheets involved in it?
It had some spreadsheets, which I was a good at a spreadsheet jockey, and then accounting, which I like. So being able to read that profit and loss. So that type of thing. And then we would read the case studies, which kind of made it feel like you were there. So learn about the guy who started the Palm Pilot, Jeff Hawkins, if I'm recalling correctly. But you read through that type of stuff, and it kind of gets the juices going and makes you think you can do that type of thing. Our business plan that we had to come up with was, what we came up with was developing digital photos, so the physical copies, of which now is nothing. You can go to a Walgreens or this or that. Even then, in 2003, it wasn't that big a deal, but how we presented it, and more important, was our teacher. He was an old General Motors guy. He knew nothing about tech, which really helped us. So we ended up getting an A+ in our proposal. My wife and her group, they decided to design something for cars. They were way more advanced than us. They had a way more talented group. They did way more research. They got a B- because he picked apart every single part of their business plan, where we had this cheesy thing that was never going to work in real life, but he knew nothing about. We got an A+.
I love it. Similar parallel. I remember doing my capstone project in grad school, and I wanted to pick something that my teacher literally knew nothing about. So for that reason, that he could not hammer it and pick it apart. Yeah.
Good metaphor for life. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know more than the next guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That makes us all sound smart in a group of idiots. Yeah.
On a much lower level, I actually went the other route. I took German in college, and my professor really, really got excited when she talked about German dessert. So I did my end of the year project on German desserts, and I just made a bunch of them and gave them to the class. And I got, it was just like, okay, good job, Mark. I don't care what you wrote your paper on. I don't care if you wrote in German, English, French, whatever. Like, you get an A. So sometimes you got to lean one way or the other. So,
bring that food.
I guess so you had this class kind of got the juices going entrepreneur wise, right? Started thinking. Did you have any say family influences or anything that any people that you really leaned on as far as like, hey, kind of not excited about working 80 hours a week. What are your thoughts on going to business for yourself?
So not yet at that point in time, but when I did go into business for myself 5 years later, I lasted until I was 26 years old, and then I couldn't kind of take the corporate world anymore. My parents hated every bit of that decision and completely flipped out. And then the family influence, I've got the bobblehead here. This is Uncle Drew, and Uncle Drew is the Buffalo Wing King. He created the Buffalo Wing Festival. This is the 20-year anniversary of it. There was an article, there's a movie around the year 2000 called Osmosis Jones, had Bill Murray. He was going to the Buffalo Wing Festival. He had a brochure.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a chicken wings, as they're called in Buffalo. There was no such thing as a chicken wing festival in Buffalo. So a writer for the Buffalo News, Don Esmond, writes an article, hey, we need someone to start this festival. Well, my uncle, who was kind of fooling around doing Hamburger Fest and that, he says, I'm going to do it. He gets the minor league baseball park. He gets 20 or so chicken wing vendors set up, and they do it Labor Day weekend. Used to be called Pilot Field, Duntire Park, downtown Buffalo, and he's run that for 20 years, and that's been his thing. So he was the one guy who would talk to me and support my decision to go out on my own, while my parents, even 13, 14 years later, still don't think that I actually do anything. I think I'm kind of an unemployed guy.
I would have loved to have been around that pitch of like the Buffalo Wing Festival. Be like, so what we're going to do, we're going to fry a whole bunch of chicken wings. We're going to have everybody come and celebrate that. Who's in? We need investors. Who's got their checkbooks open? At first, I'm sure that was a pretty tough pitch.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's kind of a bootstrapper guy. He just had the connections, and he just kind of went and did it himself. So he just pieced it together. He got the sponsors. He got all the kind of the money on board. Got the restaurants to show up. Didn't charge. I don't think he charged a cover early on, but they would charge some money for the wings, take a cut. But the first one was profitable, and then away he went with that. A few years later, he was on the Food Network with Bobby Flay doing a throwdown. Flay wanted the original Anchor Bar, which is where the chicken wing was invented, but their owners were not too personable. So eventually they found their way to Drew, and he does the throwdown with Flay. The audience is rigged. The kid from University of Buffalo and another native. Drew wins the throwdown, and that was it.
That's awesome, dude. That's so cool.
That is awesome.
That's awesome. Hey, next time I'm in Buffalo, I'm gonna look him up and be like, hey, Brett told me to come see you. I need some wings. I need the best.
Yeah,
wings
come
in
to Wing
Buffalo.
King. Right, it's a pilgrimage. That's right.
Absolutely, that's awesome.
That's right. Cool. And then so he always says, "Say hi to my kid. Say hi to your kids." Not that they know me. And I said, "Well, you got the bobblehead in my office." He goes, "Oh, great. So I'm Ronald McDonald to them."
Yeah. I mean, less diabetes probably though, so that's okay.
That's right. Yeah. He's done some promos where he's done weight loss on chicken wings, proving that they can be the part of a healthy diet.
That is a diet I can get behind.
Yeah, all for that, 100%. Yeah. All right, so we'll just kick right. So Brett, so you're, let's go into where your parents were at, right? So you're, graduate from college. I'm sure they spent, or you were a good chunk of change on a amazing degree from a prestigious university, and you're like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go, slog it out in the entrepreneur world. Like, how did that play around with your family?
Not well. It did not play well. My wife still remembers the moment I broke the news to my parents. It was March of 2008, so it was good timing because I had a nice, stable, well-paying job just as the world was falling apart. And then I decided I didn't want that well-paying, stable job. I was going to go out on my own and create this new kind of software product out of nothing. So they came for Easter weekend, and I broke the news to them right away. And my wife pulls up at our rental house at the time, and it's my parents staggered on the front stoop. Kind of had these steps that went up, and just everyone's just staring blankly out to the street. I think even our dog's out there looking just catatonic out at the street. And she pulled up, and she knew that the news had been dropped, and her instinct was just to keep on driving. I think she
keep driving. Yeah.
She regrets pulling up, and that was it. And that kicked off an entire weekend of awkwardness with them. So they didn't react well to the news, and to be fair, they just never reacted well to it. So I think it's something that but I was 26 years old, and as a grown up, then it's kind of time to make your own decisions. That's kind of where I was at.
Yeah, and I don't want you to make fun of your parents or even make fun. I mean, everybody makes decisions for what they do things for. But kind of, why do you think there was some parts of a generation, or even people that have that mindset that you're basically a bonkers crazy, right, for starting your own business and striking out on your own and doing that? What do you think kind of drives that, and why is there such a conflict there with so many people?
Yeah, if you think about their experience, and that's just in general where people are coming from. My dad worked for the same company for 38 years.
Sure.
Nice career, nice retirement. My mom worked for New York State for over 30 years, exact same job the entire time. So when you think about where people are coming from, and you think about, again, like our parents' generation, just in general, that was more common, where you spent multiple decades or maybe your whole career in the same place, and that's what you did. So you think about that perspective versus the perspective of someone who's doing their own thing. It is a completely different mindset. So that's where, and my uncle reminded me, he said, hey, you got to think about where your parents are coming from versus where he was always kind of a goofball who was kind of floating around doing his own thing and then settled into the entrepreneurial world. It's actually easier, I think, to do it when you are kind of a goofball versus when you are more established and you're wanting to just kind of have a respectable career.
Yeah. It was you being an engineer. I think a lot of this. We had a previous guest, Lankao Oak, on it, and he did all the stuff like you did. Got his master's, working for the big engineering firm, And he said one day he was sitting at his desk and doing like a good engineer, running a Excel spreadsheet on when he could retire, and he's like, I have to work here for 40 years. Like,
it's a scary moment. I remember that moment. My first job out of school was with General Electric, and this is before they were Enron. I mean, it was like a cool company to work for. Just after Jack Welch, it was a leadership program, so it was still they still had that shine on, and just that first month of work was brutal. I remember calling my buddy from college every day saying, "Is this it? Is this what our lives are going to be for the next 30 years?" I'm like, "This is terrible. This is awful." And that was the first kind of 13 months of my career until I bounced out of GE to a smaller company where things got much, much better. But it was hard to stomach how terrible the day-to-day was.
And I try to explain that to people that, like, it's not that you hate where you work or the people or it's just the being there and knowing that, like, kind of almost if I worked harder or worked less, like, I don't really get rewarded. I just kind of move my way up, and it's kind of ethereal, right? You kind of just
It is, yeah, it is. And now you're kind of reminding me that was a moment when I wanted to go because I like GE because they were ranking players, A players, B players, C players, and I worked really hard that first year and I got a B, and I said, okay, well I'm out of here. So I remember telling my buddy, and you to your point, the people were great. I mean, I was real good friends with the rest of my team. We remained good friends after I left. I remember calling my buddy who I started with aside. He was out of Purdue, and we were the two new hires. And we ran out, and I said, "Hey, Marcos, I'm leaving." He goes, "Damn it!" He's like, "You beat me to it." So he left a few months later, but I kind of beat him to it. So yeah, that was the thing. Is it's in that corporate environment, it's kind of tough with that sort of, especially a command and control type of culture coming from the top. And like you said, is no individual people necessarily to blame there. It's just the way it's set up.
Yeah. And I always talk to people too, like, and for people that work there, I mean, there's people that like that environment, and that's great. I'm glad they do, right? Like they keep the wheels in motion sometimes, right? And that's, it makes stability, and that's I think it's great. Like I don't knock that, right? It's not everybody just is wired different, and that's okay to be wired different.
That's right. Yeah, more power to them. And I've seen people who have done that, and then they thought they hated it and wanted to, like we're talking about, try to start your own thing. Sure. Which has its own challenges, and let's be honest, I mean, you're more likely to fail than not. Sure. And they kind of get that spectacular failure out of their system, and then they go back to the big company, and it's great. Like, so a lot of it is perspective, where you're grateful to have that. I mean, that paycheck showing up every 2 weeks, that's not the worst thing in the world. Where
it's not.
Just
watching the 401k, tick up, and
it just ticks up all the time. Exactly.
Your health care is paid for, all that kind of stuff. You're like, this isn't so terrible. Yeah,
that's right.
Oh. Yeah. Well, cool. So, so you're 26-year-old Brett, your parents, are not talking to you currently. And, what was Crometa your first run, or did you have something where you kind of have an idea, or what was kind of that launching point when you're like, I'm going out on my own, I'm going for it?
Yeah. Crometa was the first real run. I kind of tried something a few years back that was kind of a half-hearted, spectacular failure where I was trying to create, I called it campus flea market, and it was supposed to be like eBay for college campuses. Got a bunch of pens printed. I think I still have 500 pens somewhere that my wife totes around. Paid a lawyer $2,000. I didn't have $2,000 to pay to incorporate. So I bought this auction software for $2,500. So I put a decent amount of money for a kid with no money into this thing, and it just kind of never went anywhere. But at least that was a first taste of it. And then, but I never let go of that idea of kind of breaking free, doing my own thing. So fast forward a few years, 2007. And then I was talking to my best friend at the company I was working with called Planosaur, and I said, "Hey, I got my college buddy who's an attorney has this idea." He says, "Man, if you can ever make this software that captures my time, because I got to bill for my time, but I can't pick a stopwatch to start and stop it because I'm working and I can't jump. I'm jumping around, then I forget to record my time. It's like I need something just on my computer, almost Big Brother, but on me. But I'm going to use that to create my bill." So I told my buddy that. And then one day out of the blue, he gets fired, and he looks at me, and he's like, "Well, I think I'm going to do this." And I tell him, "Well, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you." And then later he says, "Wow, you were a real asshole for saying that." He's like, "I can't believe you told me," as I'm upset that this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. But years later, he said, it was right because it was the impetus for he develops it. And then I said, "Well, if you can develop it or get us going, then I'll quit and I'll spend all the time trying to market it." And that's what we did. That's what kind of got us off and running, and that was 2008. We came to market, which was, of course, world kind of melting down, but not a bad time to
try
for nothing.
So the funny thing is, how did you go from being like engineer, who aren't really known for their entrepreneurial prowess, right? It's like you're not like the artist or the the goofy guy like you're talking about, to kind of become an entrepreneur. Where did that switch, or is that kind of always in there and you just were good at engineering and happened to do that?
Yeah, I guess I was never great at engineering, so maybe that helped me. When I started in college, I wanted to be a computer science major. And then I learned that people who are computer science majors, they've been programming since they were 8. And I was going to program the first time when I was 17 when I entered college. And I got destroyed. I had no chance. I mean, this was like Greek. Luckily, I found a good partner who got me through a couple of the computer science classes. But I was never good at being an engineer, so that helped. And I was going to drop out of the engineering school, which would have made my parents irritated at me at an earlier age. But fortunately, I stayed. I found a major called operations research and industrial engineering. got a fancy name, but at Cornell, it was called imaginary engineering because it was the easiest of the engineering majors. And I said, well, this is where I want to be. I can play intramural sports, I can drink beer, and I can kind of do my thing, and I still come out with an engineering degree. So that was kind of my saving grace and my entree, I guess, into the business world. We give a lot of presentations. You get up, you talk, you wave your hands a bunch, and I like doing that. So that got us ready for the whole internet world that we have.
So the least engineer. That was your focus.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, minimal engineering.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, you kind of start Crometa, and kind of what were some, and you can talk about it or not talk about it. We can cut this out if you want, Brett. But what were kind of the, what was the big success, and what did you really learn? What from the failures down the road, right? Kind of how did that play out?
Yeah, good question. I think the success was we got a product to market in a really difficult industry to break into. I mean, most lawyers, they've been, and we were selling to solo and small firm attorneys, and you're trying to sell to a 72-year-old solo practitioner who's been practicing law in the same strip mall parking lot office in a suburb of Indianapolis, Indiana. He's been practicing for the last 48 years and using the same software products for the last 34 years, but he doesn't use them. It's his admin or paralegal who's getting him set up. And you're trying to sell one thing to that guy so he can pay you $19 a month and then call you up every month because he forgot how to use the product in between. But we somehow got our little idea to about 2,000 of those types of people. And at least as long as I was with the company, we never made any real money doing it. We were just making enough to kind of cover our expenses. My co-founder had made a salary. I never really made much. And I invested a lot into it. I ended up investing over $300K was my initial thing. So when I was able to get out and recoup, not really a portion of that, but about 195 of that or so, at least it set me up for the next thing. And kind of glad that so it teaches a lot of valuable lessons, even though it is expensive, I guess, if you're going to pencil it out from a monetary standpoint, and then also from how long you're working for free. Because I was kind of working for free. I mean, I didn't pull a salary from 2008 until really my next company, Lead Dyno, which was probably until 2015 or so.
Yeah. Which is an interesting, some people look at that and they look at like, oh, well, I didn't get as much as I put in, worked for free a bunch. And I think some people, that just wrecks them and makes them sick to the stomach, and they won't even entertain. I mean, those are the people that go back to W-2. They go back to like state work. They're like, I want guaranteed. But there is a section of crazy people out there who are just like, oh man, sweet, I got 95,000 out of that and a whole lot of life lessons. Next thing that could tank. Yes, sign me up.
Right. Yeah. No, it's exactly right, Mark. Yeah, I think a normal logical person, what I found, most people can work for free if they're really excited and juiced up going in. They got about a year in them, so they can go work for free for about a year, and then they start to question their life ROI on everything. Yeah. And then maybe if you can squeeze another year out, you might get to profitability and help them hang out. Then, fortunately, somebody like me, I just have a screw loose, so I'm doing one thing and then the next, and Lead Dyno, like we sold on a Friday, and I'm still working my next thing on Sunday or Monday. So I just kind of have something wrong with me, which actually helps.
Yeah.
Set up.
Because I thought all of that, because I've been entrepreneurial for over a decade. I left the biggest bureaucracy you can leave, the U.S. government, right? I was in the military. I don't know if there's a more bureaucratic institution than that, right? But it is like this. I don't know. It's almost like you're not afraid to fail, but it's not like you don't want to make mistakes. But you're like, I don't know, I'll just make it work. I'll figure something out, right? Like, I love the thought of just trying to grow something, and it doesn't really bother me. And I guess if I fail, I just keep working. I've never not been able to make money or support the things that I want to do ever, so I'll just keep doing that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly, Josh. I think worst case, you don't end up as poorly off as you think you would have if you took a few years off to not work, not make money. You guys know the way the tax system is set up in our country. You take away an income, actually, it doesn't set you back as much as you think it might, because you'll get knocked down in the brackets. And from my standpoint with Crometa, we were able to, when you're losing money, I mean, you are able to, if you do it without getting, we did go audited once, but you are able to kind of write that off as well. So it can help you out. It doesn't set you back as much as you think, just like too high incomes might not set you ahead in this world as much as you think you do.
Mm-hmm. Right. I try to explain to people all the time, like the way the tax code is currently set up, I don't know what it looks like in the future, but currently having a business is the best tax shelter you could ever have. Like, just like you were talking about, right? Like it's real. You don't have to get nerdy to really see it, but it really is a huge benefit owning a business. It's just astronomical, really.
It is, yeah. It's tough to your point. Yeah, it's tough to beat. And then even as things get discussed, and you see it with the current session tax plans, it's not levying taxes on small business, right? That's the type of thing that's not really politically popular.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Plus, it would destroy entire industries. All the CPAs would, throw their pocket protectors at Congress and all. It would just be mayhem. So.
That's right. Yeah.
There's got to be something more threatening than getting a pocket protector thrown at you. I don't know.
Maybe cutting off the political donations.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So how did that shift into lead? So what big changes or were there any big changes when you launched that second business where you're like, hey, I learned this from the first one, going to the second one. Here's how I'm doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah, we got to market much faster. So first time it took us 2 years to get to market. So from the time we started the company to the time we had a product that was out there and that we were selling. Lead Dino, we had it within a year. We had that product out and we were selling it. So I think there's value of getting it out there as fast as you can and getting the customers as fast as you can. So that was one. I thought with the first company, maybe we got unlucky in terms of it was a tough industry. It was a high level of difficulty. And then maybe the breaks that we didn't get the first time, we got the second time around where it was it was e-commerce and it was growing. And then there was the Shopify ecosystem. So maybe we didn't get breaks first time, but then you catch some breaks the second time. And then your experience, you're just better. You know what to do. So you're able to kind of move better. And then we were smart enough to charge more money for what we were doing. And then we were in an industry that was support paying more. So stuff just lined up better the second time around overall, but definitely an advantage of it being the second time as well.
Yeah. And, I think it kind of goes back to that, you do learn a lot when you fail, right? Which is good and bad, right? But when you do kind of fail, you're kind of like, okay, what did I do wrong? And a good entrepreneur, I think, or anybody really, not even an entrepreneur, you'll go back and take those lessons learned and how do I pull that back? And what did I do wrong? Where did I pivot? Did I put, too much time and effort here or there? And how do I make that work on the next one? And so what was that other lesson? What were kind of those things that you did wrong at Crometa that you did so much better at Lead Dino? By obviously having a higher sales point and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think thinking about who you're selling it to. If you're selling, so we're in the SaaS world, so selling like a tool that's an operational product, which is Crometa, right? So it's in theory it makes people more money because they're able to find more billable hours, but we were never able to really command a price premium for that. It was really viewed more as an operational tool, which is like an overhead expense, which is the ceiling on what you're able to charge for something. Whereas with Lead Dino, it was a sales and marketing tool, and you guys know people spend on sales and marketing. So being in that was just exactly. So you got the wind. You got the wind at your back from that standpoint.
Sure.
So that's a big one. And then a lot of it is just kind of innate, just knowing what to do and when in terms of the product development. I remember early on with Crometa, you're just spending lots of time worrying about features and this and that and what should we be focusing on. And the more you do it, the more kind of innate it becomes, where you talk to customers, you listen a little bit, and then you do some development here. You're not as ashamed of shipping something that's imperfect maybe. And you just kind of run faster. So the speed helps you as well and the experience. And I mean, I understand it was frustrating the first time. We did look a little bit for angel and venture money. Nobody wants to fund a first-time person. And then the second time around, I understood why nobody wants to fund a first-time person because the odds are so far against you. You almost need to the odds of succeeding the first time the odds of succeeding any time are very tough. So the first time it's just that much harder. You almost need to get that one out of your system, and then you move on to the second.
I'm sure there's a good analogy where you have to fail the first time, and then you get better after that. I don't know what that. I can think of one that's really inappropriate, and I won't use that one. But there's ones where you're probably not stellar your first couple of goes at it, and then you get better with time.
That's
you
right.
learn the techniques and how to make it better.
Right. You don't give up though.
Yeah, don't give up. You gotta keep pushing though, man. You gotta keep pushing. Yeah. So, again, that kind of that middle stage, what did you do? I always hear entrepreneurs that are like, hey, I just, I'm right out of high school or college and I'm ready to start my first business and go for it. Right. And, a lot of people, or a lot of times I tell people like, go get that job in the corporate world or do something in that arena, because go learn something from some people that have kind of failed before, right? Like most businesses that have been around for 20 or 30 years, they've probably made 80% of the mistakes that you would make year one out the gate, right? Yeah. That's not always the fact, but if you want to be in, so what are your kind of thoughts on that? I mean, should someone right out of college, just go for it, or kind of maybe go learn? I guess there's not a perfect answer to that, but
yeah, no, I agree with you. It's tough coming right out of school. With Crometa, we did have an early employee. I mean, he was basically a co-founder who we hired. I say hired. We weren't paying him because we weren't making any money. He worked for free for us for a long time, as we all did. And then about 2 years, he got burnt out, and then he went to go get his real. Actually, did another startup, and then he went to go get a real job. And I think he's still been kicking around sort of the real job world sense. I think it was tough. We were not an ideal place for a first time person out of school. Right. I mean, it was startups. It's more of a mature situation where I shouldn't be mentoring you first time out. It's that's not good for anyone. So that was kind of that situation where, as in my case, I was lucky because I got a little bit of that corporate experience, enough to know when I talk to someone at a big company, I know what they're going through. I know what that's like. And then my real, I think, value of work before, I worked for a small software company called Planisware, and I was employee number 10 in their U.S. operations, and their managing director in the U.S., he saw me and he knew I kind of identified early on I was kind of willing to take on anything he would throw at me. So he handed a lot of stuff off to me. I would work extra. I would do a lot of extra stuff for him, but in exchange, he would just kind of walk me through. I got to see how the entire business ran. I got to see the finances. I got to see sales. I got to see everything, human resources. So I had a feel for how the whole company was running when I went to go start my own. Didn't mean I was set for success right away, but there's a lot of stuff that I learned from that, having a bird's eye view. So not only in that industry, but also with a small company where I was able to see everything. That helped a lot.
Yeah. I would almost put it as, for conversation that you need to be part crazy, a little psychotic, but part like love implementing systems, right? Like you need to have like a marketing system and an accounting system and a sales process and all, but you also need to be, crazy enough that you're just like, and we just kind of throw some of that stuff out the window and just kind of wing it and see what happens, right? Like it's like that weird, you got to almost do both, right? As an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to work until you try it, for sure.
Right.
The experience is nice. You have ideas about what'll work, but you never really know until you try it. So you got to try a lot of stuff.
Especially on the marketing front, right? Because I know that's kind of your forte. And, marketing, like something that worked 2 weeks ago could be an absolute disaster today, or vice versa, right? What hasn't worked 20 times before, all of a sudden now it's blowing up. Like, how did we've done this before and it didn't work?
Yeah, marketing it is amazing. It changes a lot, and I've had 3 companies that are very similar in terms of their setup, business model, SaaS, and how we market them is very different. And I wish I could just go to old playbooks and have it work, but it usually doesn't. And then I turn into the old guy saying, well, we did it at this company this way, so we're going to – and then we're falling flat on our face. So you kind of start with stuff that works, but you do have to adjust. It's amazing how fast it changes, and it kind of reminded me of my early conversations with venture capitalists who are, as a whole, I mean, really smart guys, and they also haven't done anything in a while other than – they haven't done anything operationally in a while.
Sure.
So I found even early days when I was having conversations, this is 2008, 2009, very smart investors, but their operational experience was all from the mid-'90s, and they're giving me analogies that are just – they're completely irrelevant from a marketing standpoint. So it changes so fast. I think if you're out of the game, then it's very easy to lose touch fast. So you always got to figure out what's working now.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
So, and on your, because you also just had your second startup just had a successful exit from that, right? So I guess walk us through, so you had your first startup, you sold that. For the second one, what did you do differently there as far as like, hey, put 300 in and got 100 out last time. I want to make sure I'm coming out ahead this time. How did you structure that exit?
Yeah, that was interesting because it was almost that we had momentum early on. So it could have been more different. It's funny. Now we did work for free again for a few years, not as long as the first one. I think called a couple years. But what we put in, there was three of us, so three co-founders. We put in $6,000 each, so it was $18,000 total. Yeah. And then we took that money out within a couple of years, and then we're off and running. Mm-hmm. And we were all then eventually scaled our salaries up to where we were making nice salaries. That's actually when it got a little sticky between us as personalities, I guess, because my personality is always just to kind of go for it. Because my thinking is that if you always have to be aggressive because you're so much of an underdog. So you do these things early on to try to get traction and get to market. And then I think it's human nature that once you do get a salary and then you replace what you might have been making with the day job, then you want to get conservative. My first co-founder was that way with Crometa, and then from my perspective, I thought my lead Dino co-founders were a bit conservative. From their perspective, which is probably more fair, I'm a lunatic and I needed to calm down. So that was sort of that disagreement and the lead Dino side, there was no way to really reconcile it, where then I just had to get out of the day to day and take my own thing and go elsewhere because I just have an inability to tap the brakes. I always think someone's coming to squash us. And, to their point, there was no kind of squashing imminent. So, but they were, they want to run it more like responsible business people. And I want to just go out. And my thing is I want to win the market and then we'll figure out the economics later. My thinking is that if you don't win, you've got nothing. So it's a different in philosophies, not that there's different ways you can do it, but I find it's tough to get something off the ground being conservative. And then I just never get conservative with my play calling. I just keep throwing it downfield.
Yeah. You're like the guy in Madden that just runs, straight flag routes every time.
Yeah, four fly patterns, four or five wide receivers, no backfield shotgun. You throw it in the end zone every time.
Every time.
It was like, hey, it's 4th and 40. Do you think we should go for it?
Absolutely.
Right, we're going. Yeah, we're going.
We're going for it. Yeah.
On defense, you blitz. Yeah, you do the punt block, so you blitz everyone, and that's it. And that's just, I just kind of play the same way every time, and it works. It doesn't. And and I find I do. That's why I usually drive co-founders crazy over periods of time because they, as my wife says, the Brett Owens experience is fun until it isn't, and then you like it early on, and then at some point it's just too much. You got to reach for the Prilosec and get me out of it.
Yeah. So talk about that dynamic with co-founders. I've been around that. And, kind of how do you manage through that? What were some of the goods and bads of co-founders? It's almost like you need them, but sometimes they're almost a detriment, or you might be the detriment. I don't know. But how do you work through that dynamic? Because it's difficult.
It is difficult. Yeah. With the SaaS company, I think it is, I think you have two choices because especially for me, so like I said, I'm not a good engineer, even though I have an engineering degree. So I'm not going to build anything. So the minimum you need for a team is sort of a clown like me. You can get out there and market the thing, or at least try to, and then you need someone to build it. So you need a very good developer. So, and you have two ways you can find a developer. You can either have a co-founder who's going to be with you and, work for free and sacrifice. And that's probably the best way to do it. The alternative would be that you pay somebody. So they're, you're paying them hourly. So that's going to be much more expensive up front. Does it work better down the road? I don't know. I guess I'll tell you in a few years with Affluencer where I'm taking that approach and I'm the only founder because I've driven everyone else who's a good developer out of my life because I'm too crazy for them. But yeah, that has been my experience with it. Is it's great to have a co-founder early on, but it is funny because these things do run for they'll run for 5 or 10 years. I mean, Big Dino was a 9-year thing, start to finish. Crometa was 2008. It's still going. So I guess I was 9 years with that company, or 10 years, but they do tend to run for 5 to 10 years. So you are going to have different dynamics during that, different parts of the life cycle. So stuff to think about early on, whether you want to go ahead and find a co-founder, which is probably the best way to do it, especially if it's your first time. You have somebody to bounce ideas off of, you somebody that you get that synergy type thing. Later, you get older and crustier like me and more surly, then maybe you go it on your own. So those are kind of garage.
I love it. So kind of as we're kind of getting close to the end of this episode, what would be something that you would give, or some advice that you would give to the people who are kind of trying to find a co-founder, besides them being good technically? What are some other things to look at? Because usually you're all starry-eyed and you have this great idea, and you guys both think you and your co-founders both think you're on the same path, right? And you halfway into it, you realize that we're farther off than I thought, and this could be a mess, right? So how do you kind of manage through that? And how do you find better co-founders, or is that possible? Or you just have to deal with it, right?
Yeah, I think just getting going is probably the most important thing. So having that shared vision, having that sort of energy up front. I remember going to a lot of the startup happy hours, and it's always a business, quote unquote, business person who's like, I'm looking for a dev. I mean, I'm not a developer, but nothing sounds less appealing to me than some, oh, yeah, great. They're looking for a dev who can just, work under them. Each of my first two companies, we kind of had that early on where we have that energy, shared vision. We both like the project, or we all, in the case of Lead Down, all three of us like the project, and you get going. And hopefully that gives you 1 or 2 or 3 years of momentum. And I would almost just worry about the other stuff on the other side, because odds are it's hard enough to get to that point. So I think just kind of having somebody with that shared vision, the complementary skill sets. So if you're like me and you're not a programmer, better find someone who's a really good programmer who can build something for you. But I think just kind of that shared, that shared vision, that shared energy early on is probably what I would roll with.
You kind of talked about that dynamic of people that are, when they kind of hit that level of income where they're like, oh, sweet, everything's good, and they kind of want to get conservative, right, and pull back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? When you've had this massive growth and they want to almost taper it, right? And why do you think that is? I'm not saying it's good or bad, right? I think part of it's human nature, but why do you think that kind of is? I've seen that in other industries happen.
I think, it's a good question. I think it's human nature. I think for logical people that what's the be all end all, especially if you're in the corporate world, or you have a job you don't like. If you could either replace that income or even get close to it, and do your own thing and work from an office where you get your whatever kids coloring your bills stickers and puppy dogs behind you, and you can hop on a podcast in the middle of the day, you'll gladly do that. Yeah. Early on, it's easier to kind of have that, I think, risk profile, because you have nothing. So it's almost like betting at a $1 blackjack table. You kind of keep betting and betting and betting. And then when it becomes real money and you have kind of replaced that income, or you're close to it, I think that's where it's human nature to get more conservative.
Yeah. Probably
a more logical approach. And as I mentioned, I guess I'm glad I have a screw loose, or I just do, where I'm just, the money doesn't connect for me. And I really enjoy doing it. So that helps. It's more about sort of the challenge of it, and being the best you can, and doing that. And when you focus on that, then for me, the money's kind of secondary, or it's in the background. But I think once the money becomes more important, then I think it's human nature just to kind of get more conservative. Yeah. And it's the same as in sports. If we go back to our sports analogies, football, you're up a couple touchdowns. What the teams always used to do, they would
put in package, baby. They go to the nickel or the dime.
That's right. Go to the dime, prevent you from winning. So I think it's the same in startups, where, if you're not willing to be aggressive, somebody else will. Sure. And my rant, and of course it wasn't successful because, I drive people crazy, but I always say, usually to get from zero to something, you've taken market share away from somebody. In each case, we did that, where we were the upstart, and you kind of came and you lack of a better word, you kind of punched somebody in the mouth, where you're like, okay, we're coming out of nowhere and we're taking business from you. Well, now it's their turn to counterpunch. And if that's the time that you're getting conservative so you can protect your income, that's kind of a bad approach. Or really, in my view, you want to stay a step ahead of them. Yeah. And if you go down in flames, you go down in flames, but at least you're moving, versus just kind of sitting like a sitting duck, just waiting for them to react and copy you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would probably be more on your side of the camp, Brett. That's, and my wife would tell me that I'm a little nutty. So
the Josh Saunders experience.
Yeah, the Josh Saunders experience. Yes. Yeah.
JS baby.
Which was that last year or this year that you were? That was last year, where you guys were roaming the country in an RV. I mean, that was hardcore Josh Saunders experience.
Yeah. We did 5 months in an RV. That was my wife's idea, though, which was awesome.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So. No, sweet, man, Brett. That's all good stuff. I really love having that, from a multiple founders part of that psych. I don't know. I would say almost all founders are almost a little psychotic. You almost have to. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound very PC or whatever, but you almost are a little bit.
Yeah. Which you're down to just one business left, right? So do you have anything in the pipeline? Do you have any other ideas that you think you might launch here soon?
I hope not. No, I hope this is it. I found we've got Affluencer, and then on the finance side, Contrarian Outlook is our newsletter subscription service, and that was we haven't talked about that, but I was part of that. We started that business in 2015. That was kind of an add-on to sort of an existing financial website suite that these guys had, and they were looking to branch out into the newsletter side. So I found having two things is about the most I can kind of keep my head around at one time. I've had the 3 going in parallel before, and that's a bit much. So I'm kind of happy with the 2 for now, and I hope. And people, it's funny. I'll get inquiries now with people who see what's going on with Affluencer. Said, "Are you open to selling? You open to this?" And I said, "I hope it's my forever startup. Just as I'm old, and this is it. We're kind of camp out here for a while."
Yeah. You're like, I want to have my kid draw more pictures of beer and Buffalo Bills and just be happy with it. Yeah.
What more do you want? Exactly. Yeah. What more do you want? What more do you want? Plus, a reminder: these things are really hard to start.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. This reminded me of that as I'm sitting alone in my office after having a blow up with my Dino co-founders, saying how they're nothing without me, and then I go on my little rant, and then I'm like, geez, if this thing fails, I'm gonna look like a real idiot. So there are those moments that are nice to kind of remind you, okay, once you get something going,
be content.
Keep it going. Yeah,
awesome. Well, sweet, Mark, you want to kick in the speed round?
Yes, let's do the speed round. Okay, so first speed round question: if you could go back and give 8-year-old Brett a piece of advice, what would you be telling yourself?
I could tell him anything. He wouldn't listen to it.
That is a good answer.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. He wouldn't listen to 28, let alone 8.
Yeah.
My dad told me once, I'll tell you. So, I mean, my dad's credit. I think I was about 28. I went on a maybe I was a little younger. Went on a boat ride, San Francisco, Josh. So left like Fisherman's Wharf going out morning, 6 a.m. and left with some old GE buddies. So they were doing this fishing thing, going out to the Farallones. And I called my dad before. I'm like, hey, I'm going out to the fishing trip. He goes, don't drink a beer. He's like, you better not drink a beer that early. You're going to be sick. I'm like, well, my dad's so old. He can't handle drinking a beer at 6 a.m. Yeah. I cracked that 6 a.m. beer. And by 6:15, I was hanging over the side because it was going up and down in the waters. Yeah. Half the boat got seasick. It was a really rough day. I don't have sea legs. Dad was right, and 28-year-old me was not right.
There is something about being on a boat, on the ocean though, where you're like, I think the social norms of drinking just suspend here, right? Like you don't even think twice about that 6 a.m. beer.
Right. It's like an airport.
Yeah.
There's no time.
Yeah.
No time.
Well, you're just like, I'm in international waters by now, right? I mean, right. It's fine.
Right. I'll have a shot with my pancakes here at the airport.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2. What advice would you give to kids or parents who are looking at college options? Are you a big college guy or not college, or where's your...
It depends. I mean, I think college can be good. I think they're getting too stressed out. I think everyone's getting too stressed out about it. I do interview kids who are going to Cornell, and I say interview, but I'm just kind of trying to field their questions. They're all stressed out, and you can tell, I mean, I'm kind of a goofball, and I don't know if they just think I'm not funny, but they really don't feel like joking around with me just because they're very stressed out. There was a mom I spoke to. It was local downtown here in Sacramento, college career fair, and had maybe not the top schools, but that second tier, the Cornell, Columbia, University of Chicago, those realms. And I was manning the Cornell table, and I had a mom come over. She's so stressed out about how hard it is to get into schools these days, this, that. And I was trying to calm her down. I said, look, I mean, it is a numbers game. It's really hard. I don't even know if I'd get into Cornell today. She goes, you probably wouldn't. She just completely buried me.
Yeah.
So, the college thing, cool, but I mean, I don't think it's worth necessarily stressing out about it. I do think most companies still want you to have that college degree.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we all see which way this is going, though, where someday that probably won't matter.
Yeah.
So I just think from a stress standpoint, it's being overemphasized from if you're 17 or 18 right now.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just don't go to college. That's what I heard. Josh, did you hear that? Brett says don't go to college.
Yeah.
Screw college. YouTube University.
Yeah.
That's right. Right below the Peter Thiel headlines.
Yeah.
This guy never heard. This guy Brett Owens nobody ever heard of.
Yeah.
Stop out of school. So.
Awesome. Well, shifting off of business related stuff. So if you had a time machine and could experience one event from history, what are you going to go back and witness?
I tried last year. I tried it in real life. My wife was kind enough to send me to Kansas City in January for the AFC Championship game, and I thought I was going to see the Bills go to the Super Bowl, and I would be in tears. So if I have the time machine, I'll go back to January 1991 because I was too young to be there at the stadium when I was getting drunk and that. But to be at that game when they beat the then LA Raiders to go to the Super Bowl, the second half was a big party. I just think, and again, part of this is I just never grew up, so I'm still the 8-year-old kid you guys describe. And I didn't come up with this saying. I heard it on Sirius XM. I think it was NHL radio. And I tell my family, like, look, I love you all very much. I've just loved the Bills longer. It's just no offense, but this is just the most important thing in my life when it is. So if I could go back to something like that, I would take it.
That was Frank Reich, right?
That was Jim Kelly who
still Jim Kelly.
took him that year, but Frank Reich was the backup. So you're right. And then Frank Reich won the 2 playoff games for him a couple years after.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Don't challenge a massive Buffalo Bills fan to a Buffalo Bills trivia. That's right there.
Well, you're lucky that you can go back into a time machine and actually see your team win the Super Bowl. As a Vikings fan, I mean, I could just pick a different kick we've shanked. I mean, we've got lots of those I could go witness, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, we're there with you, Mark. I said to go to the Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
We're with you on the. Yeah. Super Bowl attendee.
Yes.
All right. So you and your wife, your kids have adequate supervision, babysitters. You got someone walks up and says, "Here's 2 tickets. You can fly anywhere for a week. Where are you and your wife going?"
Well, I love how you preface it, Josh. As a dad, you have the kids taken care of, this and that. I think we probably bounced to Costa Rica. We went there. I was probably my biggest turnaround, maybe one sign of maturity as an adult. We went there in our honeymoon, 2007. And for whatever reason, I just complained about it. I said, I got bit up by mosquitoes, didn't like it. Nobody hustles here. I need more hustle in my life. We went back 2 years ago and loved it. And I just really appreciate hey, everyone just lives day to day here. Pura vida, this is great. What's not to like? So I kind of came full circle. And maybe the one sign of maturity I've had as an adult. So that'd be a nice place to go back to. Go to the little beach Pacific side over there, especially after the 2021 everyone's had. That'd be good to get out for a week.
Yeah.
I think we'll choose that.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, perfect. Yeah. Well, awesome. We'll kind of end the episode there, and we'll kind of talk about we'll go into entrepreneurship and your current.
And I am excited for the next episode because it is going to be more about funding your, hey, do we go get investors? Do we just bootstrap and self-fund, right? And I think, especially in the SaaS industry, there's a lot of hey, let's just get a concept and then let's go get a bunch of investors, right? Yeah. Let's get a bunch of investors. And you kind of have a different look as far as hey, A, no one wants to talk to you. B, what if you just funded it yourself? So really excited to get more into that and kind of get your take on that. So, but yeah, and if anyone wanted to find you, follow you, get your newsletter, plug your channels real quick. Where can people go find you?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. So on the financial side, contrarianoutlook.com, we have a free daily newsletter that goes out, everything about dividends, income investing, that type of thing. So you can sign up there. On the influencer, brand, creator front, Affluencer is the name. We're having a little discussion with the U.S. Patent Office right now about the novelty of that name, but it is a name that we made up, and it's influencer with an A, so it's Affluencer, AFLUENCER.com.
Perfect, and those will be in the show notes. You can always just click the link, and hopefully the Patent Office gives you guys a break there. So.
Hopefully they realize we appreciate your support, Mark.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
if I knew somebody, I'd give them a call, Brett. I promise. I would call them for you.
Yeah. Connections with the Patent Office, not in my resume. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up there. Thank you so much for being on. Real quick, nothing we say can be taken as tax, legal, or financial advice. So if there's anything on this show that you found interesting, get in touch with Brett directly. Get in touch with us. We can point you over to his direction. Brett, thank you so much. Really looking forward to talking about self-funding versus investors in our next episode.
Same here. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Josh.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.